Good morning. My name is Douglas Taylor. I am the minister of this congregation, and it is a joy to welcome all of you here today to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Binghamton. All are welcome who come in peace, no matter who you are or whom you love. As Unitarian Universalists, we gather in the spirit of love, encouraging each other in the search for deeper meaning and richer connection. As we begin our service, I note that several of you are looking for the order of service. Today is a non-traditional service. What we will be doing is slightly different than our usual, but you are all wonderfully invited to participate, and you'll figure it out. I'll explain it in just a sec. If you're a newcomer or a visitor, we extend a special welcome to all of you. We hope that you were offered a yellow packet by a greeter when you came in the door. And if you fill out the form that's clipped there, we'll get you a name tag and a subscription to our newsletter that arrives as the weekly e-beacon. There's also a printed version of it hanging on the bulletin board outside the office if you want to have that. There is still an announcements insert in this order of service of sorts. And I don't have any additional announcements except to offer a little bit of an explanation. The service today is all wrapped up in these packages. Every element that we usually have in a service is in one of those boxes. And throughout the service, any one of you is invited to come forward, open one of those boxes, and discover what it is. It may be the closing words. It may be one of the songs. It may be the offertory. It may be my reflection. You may have an opportunity, if you open, for example, the opening words, to say those opening words for the congregation. Many of the things will be found in the hymnal, and so I encourage you to have a hymnal on hand. For example, if you're used to singing the doxology but you don't know the words, when we open that element, it will indicate where in the hymnal you will find the doxology words. And so if you're the one opening that, you'll tell everybody where to look in the hymnal. Are you with me? So there's three things that I'm going to do before, there's three things that I'm going to do outside of what's wrapped up in these 15 packages. One is these announcements. The other is to light the chalice. And the third will be to extinguish the chalice, which I'll do at the end. Before we get into the fullness of our service, it is our joy to welcome any visitors with us today to rise and be recognized. Perhaps you are from out of town or simply visiting for the first time. If you would like, we invite you to stand and tell us your name and where you're from. Are there any here who would like to stand and be recognized? We invite everyone to join us for conversation and refreshment in the social hall after the service, and again, welcome. Life is a gift for which we are thankful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift of life. And with that, we begin the service. Is there anyone here who would like to come up and open a present? All right, Sean. Come on, Sean stood, so come on. You'll get the first one. So what I'll have you do is you come pick one and you open it up here, and any part of it that you want to keep, you can keep. Sure. And if you want to just leave wrapping paper up here, that's fine too. I don't remember what's in each one. microphone there, if you'll tell us what it is that you opened.
Says reflection, hibernation, contemplation, germination, Reverend Douglas Taylor.
All right, so we go right into the reflection, which is usually much later in the service. You get to keep this if you'd like. It's a Christmas tree ornament. Thank you. Every year around this time, I start thinking about hibernation. There is a part of me that just wants to shut down, to close up, to leave the world to spin on its own without me for a while. I know many people who deal with seasonal depression, people who have an adverse reaction to the dwindling amount of daylight, or who can't muster Christmas cheer that is demanded of us at this time of year. Me, I sort of just wish I could turn into a bear for a month or so and hibernate. Fun fact, I learned this weekend that bears don't actually hibernate. Not that I could actually hibernate either, but scientifically speaking, what bears do is something other than hibernate. Hibernation is a state of inactivity and decreased metabolism, meaning that the animal has a slower heart rate and lower body temperature and slower breathing. Hibernating animals appear to be in a deep sleep for months. Hedgehogs, ground squirrels, and certain lemurs are known to hibernate. They curl up for the winter and conserve their energy so they can survive when food is scarce. Bears technically do not hibernate. They go into a state of torpor. Torpor is one step above hibernation. In a torpor state, the animal will still wake up at times, move around, get a snack. In hibernation, the animal is out cold and will not wake up even if you make loud noise or try to move them. So I am actually drawn to be like a bear when winter comes. I know I'm not the only one who is like this. Each winter, many humans have this urge to slow down, to settle in for decreased activity and rest. We don't go into a months-long torpor or hibernation, but I at least try to listen to the rhythm of the earth and slow down a bit. I can echo the lesson of the bear and of the hedgehog. I don't do exactly as they do, but I can learn from their example. Winter solstice, which was just a few days ago, is a balanced time in the year. Animals know it's a time to turn inward, to heed the turning of the wheel of the year. The light and the dark each have their blessing. That is the time winter hits us, and we think about the darkness more. It's interesting that this is when we've turned the corner, when we've actually passed winter solstice and the light is returning, that suddenly we get hit by this darkness, this feeling of cold winter. It's winter that brings us the blessings of the darkness, even as the light is actually returning. It is a quintessential time of contemplation. Many New Year's Eve rituals focus on saying farewell to the past year and making a resolution for what to do in the coming year. It's like planting a seed, making a wish, or a promise of what will come. We often think of seeds as what we plant in the spring, grow into plants in the summer, and then harvest in the autumn. But in the natural world, where there is no farmer to put seeds into careful rows in the ground, the seeds instead simply fall to the ground during autumn, and winter serves an important purpose. Instead of winter being just a time that we have to wait through before we can plant our seeds, we can be like the natural world and put seeds out now, letting wintertime serve a purpose. The cold and the dark will nourish the seeds that we plant in our hearts. The New Year's resolutions or the promises of what we will welcome into our lives as the days grow longer, these are like seeds that we are planting that get covered up by the snow. This way, the waiting serves a purpose. The waiting helps us get ready for the germination and growth that will come when it is time for it to come. So consider this. What if my longing to be a bear, to turn from all the fuss and bother of the world for a time, what if that longing is not to hide or escape? What if that longing is to be like the natural world in winter, to have the dark serve its deep purpose of nourishing the seeds of hope and light that we have planted within us, within our hearts, now ready to grow? We can't grow all the time. Sometimes we need to just stand still. The word solstice literally translates as sun stands still. It's at this balance time when the shift of daylight is getting shorter and then the daylight it begins to get longer. Solstice is that hinge, that still point, the balance. The sun stands still. We can't grow all the time. There must be some time of waiting, of quiet receiving from life. Hibernation and contemplation and germination now is a time when we can, like the earth, turn inward, slow down, consider our lives, plant our seeds, and wait for spring when life will again arise, bright and glorious within us. May this solstice time lead you into a time of standing still, even if it's but for a few moments. May you find yourself nourished, renewed, and ready. And may your seeds be well planted in this slow time of rest and grace. A world without end. May it be so. It feels really weird to have done the reflection first. Who's next? Come on up. Sure. Yeah. You can pick any of them. Oh, okay. It's a Christmas tree ornament, and it's a scroll.
By Kathleen McTeague. We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we can claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together.
I do want to share with you that the Christmas tree ornament that you're holding, the piece of wood is from a tree that we used to have out in the courtyard that we called our climbing tree that got too old and we had to take down. So the branches we cut into discs, and I had a couple dozen left over. And so we put, with a wood burner, we put a chalice on one side and the letters of our congregation, Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Binghamton, on the other. So it's a commemorative Christmas tree ornament for you to take home as our gift to whoever has opened a present, and today that's you.
Thank you.
So who else would like to come and open a present?
Can I just interject one thing? The tree is on our banner, which
Yes.
is hanging in the back of the sanctuary.
Yeah.
We used to have, so
Yeah. Trebby, would you come up? I've seen your hand up for a little bit. You're like a kid on Christmas morning wanting to open a present.
Very well sealed.
No, it's just I didn't mean to make it difficult. Sorry.
It builds the suspense.
What might this part of the service be?
Spoken meditation, followed by silence,
And then followed by,
followed by hymn 55.
all right. So, if you'll get hymn 55 ready, and if you're willing,
Yes?
I'll have you read the meditation,
All right.
and then we'll go into silence, and then we'll sing hymn 55. How many verses are in 55? 2. Is that, we can do that. All right, that's what we'll do. Whenever you're ready.
Earth wobbles in her orbit, tilting this way, in toward the sun, just ever so slightly, then back out and away. Riding on the surface, we shift ever so slightly from closer to farther away and back. Winter arrives at the moment when the shifting ends and begins, a moment of pause. In these latitudes, increasing sun blesses the coldest days, and so it is in our hearts. Though our orbits are irregular, we wobble too and grow cold in spirit until the sun begins to bright. Little by little, warmth returns. We come to trust the shift will never end. Will end. Wow. We come to trust the shift will end, pause, and begin again in the other direction. But for us, it takes effort, self-reflection, and sharing with others. Still, nature does move us in that way.
Let us be in silence together. Walt, I saw your hand shoot up. Come on up. Yeah, pick one of the gold boxes. All right. Is there a number listed?
473.
Everyone can turn to page number 473, and there's two changes in the way that it's written in our hymnal. What number was it again?
473.
473. All right, so the one that we have, we edited slightly. So instead of the word church, we have the word congregation. And then in the next sentence, instead of the word law, we have life? Is that what we have? And services are life, yeah. So that's the difference. Lead us.
Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its life. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Thanks, Walt. Linda. Oh, and I see you. All right. I feel like this is a little bit of a test of Douglas's memory of knowing everybody. I see you. I see your hand. All right, you're going to be in my rotation. All right. But first, we're going to have Linda come up. You too good of a job rapping.
Nah, you're good. I got nothing else. Very nice rap. Yeah, I like that. Nice job. You could teach classes on rapping.
My wife taught me everything I know about rapping.
Oh, there you go.
It's a scroll.
Oh, this is awesome. Nice. Oh, the doxology.
What number is it?
Pardon me. Doxology number 381, please.
371.
Oh, 371. Let's set 381. From all that dwell below the sky, let songs of hope and faithful rise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
Karen, come on up. And then you're next. All right? Just wait your turn. Oh, you're going to keep the paper too. So you can keep any part of this that you want to keep. All right.
Oh, I like the blue one.
All right.
I bet it's a tie.
to reading The Blessing for the Longest Night. This is a long one. By Jan Richardson. All throughout these months, as the shadows have lengthened, this blessing has been gathering itself, making ready, preparing for the night. It has practiced walking in the dark, traveling with its eyes closed, feeling its way by memory, by touch, by the pull of the moon, even as it wanes. So believe me when I tell you, this blessing will reach you, even if you have not light enough to read it. It will find you even though you cannot see it coming. You will know the movement of its arriving by your release of the breath you have held so long, a loosening of the clenching in your hands, of the clutch around your heart, a thinning of the darkness that had drawn itself around you. This blessing does not mean to take the night away, but it knows its hidden roads, knows the resting spots along the path, knows what it means to travel in the company of a friend. So when this blessing comes, take its hand, get up, set out on the road you cannot see. This is the night when you can trust that any direction you go, you will be walking toward the dawn.
Caitlin, would you like to come up and open a present now? All right. Yeah, you go right on. All right. Try this side. Yeah, there's some. Yeah, you can get a hold on there. There you go. Turn it around. That's the bottom. Alrighty. And now, pop that right on open. Deep down. Oh, it might have fallen down in. Oh, there you got it. All right.
Yeah, story, Aisha's Longest Night by Anika Stafford.
All right. Aisha's Longest Night. Well, I will now tell you all a story. You can come back to your seat. This is from a book that has a collection of stories that mark the cross-quarter days in the year as Earth-centered folks practice that. So this one is about the longest night. So in this series of stories, Aisha is a young girl whose family are all pagan or earth-centered in their practice, and so they celebrate the quarters and the cross-quarters as holidays, and the solstice is one of them. And she writes in her story about how her family celebrates. They gather all of their friends and their neighbors to come and visit, and even her best friend, Heather, Aisha and Heather are best friends. Heather and her family comes. The only problem is she and Heather are in the middle of a fight right now because they both want to, they're both auditioning and they both want the exact same part in the play that they're doing at the school. And so they got into a fight about it a little bit. So Aisha's not actually all that excited about having Heather and all of those people come over. But it's December 21st, and her family opens up their door, and all of their close friends and a couple of the neighbors even, they come over. What they do is they have this huge sleepover in the living room where they put all of the sleeping bags in a circle around the center, which is an old iron box that last year, as part of the solstice, they had painted that box. This year, they use it as their center table, their altar table, if you will. And they've got different elements on it to mark air and and earth and fire and water. And at one point in the evening, when everyone's all finally there and settled in and crowded in a little bit, Aisha, kind of sitting on the opposite side of the room from her friend Heather, because she's not so sure that she and Heather are friends anymore because they're in the middle of a fight. Well, one of the friends, one of the adults, Alex, he pulls out this piece of paper and he puts it out and he says, "With everything so cold and dark outside, winter solstice is a time to turn inside and dream about what we want to plant when the light returns." He says, "It is a time to leave some things behind. Let's share some things that we want to leave behind in the dark." And so all of the people, there's like 20 people in this living room, have an opportunity to come up and write something down on that big piece of paper that Alex put out. And one person comes up and she writes out, "I want to say goodbye to being so busy at this time of year so that I can spend more time with my friends." And then somebody else comes up and says, "I want to say goodbye to writing those stories that are boring and dull. I want to get into some fun kids' story writing." And Aisha's turn comes and she doesn't know what to say. And so she just lights a candle and she doesn't say anything. And everybody else, though, comes up and writes a little something that they're going to say goodbye to with the darkness. And she does notice, though, that Heather, her friend, also doesn't say anything and just lights a candle instead. Well, when that part is done, Aisha sees her friend Alex, the adult, pull out another piece of paper and say, "Now on this one, the light is starting to return. And what do we want to welcome into our lives as the light returns?" Well, immediately two of the other young kids from down the block a little bit say, "Cookies!" They say cookies in unison together right away. That's what we want to welcome in to our mouths, right? So lots of people come up and they write something down. Again, Aisha can't think of what she would say, and so she doesn't say anything. She notices that her friend Heather doesn't write anything on the paper either. And so the circle wraps up, and they conclude this thing. Alex takes those papers and he tapes them up on the wall so everybody can see them. And people settle in for the night. They got a fire in the fireplace off to the side over there, protected by a grate. You know, this is, right, safe. And then they all curl up in their sleeping bags and they go to sleep. And then, in the middle of the night, Aisha wakes up from a nightmare. She had this nightmare where she and her friend Heather were climbing a mountain, and in this dream, she and Heather each kept trying to push the other off the mountain, until finally, in her dream, both Aisha and Heather had been pushed off the mountain and were falling and falling, and she woke up, and she was in a bit of a panic, and she looked around the living room. And she wasn't on a mountain, and she wasn't falling, and she wasn't in a fight with her friend pushing each other. But she couldn't fall back asleep either. So she got up, and she collected her own journal, and she went off to her own bedroom. And she shut the door, and she felt like stomping. She was so angry from this nightmare that had scared her. She was so angry at having this fight with her best friend. She wanted to shout and yell. She wanted to go out and wake Heather up and yell at her for pushing her off the mountain, except that had just been a dream. And so she just opened her window and she looked out at the snow and the dark, and she said, "This is the worst winter solstice ever." She took out her journal. She wrote, "Heather and I had a big fight this week. I'm not sure if we're still best friends." And she thought about it, and she looked at the journal that she had been writing on, and she saw that the cover had stars all over it. And she remembered that she and Heather had decorated journals together back at one of the other holidays. It was an equinox. It was the autumn equinox. She and Heather had painted stars on their journals together. They hadn't fought about who had the bigger star or who had the better colors. They had just done it together. And she looked around her room, and she noticed a couple other things like that. Some paintings, some statues even, some fun things that she and Heather had done together at the holidays. And they hadn't fought about those things. And yet, why was she fighting with her friend now? She wished there could be a different way. So what she decided to do, she went out to the living room where everybody was still asleep. She took a marker and in big block letters, she wrote out, "I want to say goodbye to fighting with Heather about plays, not being best friends anymore. I want to be best friends." And then she noticed, as she stepped back and looked at her writing, she noticed off to the other corner that somebody had written, "I want to say goodbye to fighting with Aisha." And she thought to herself, Heather wrote that on there. And she went over to the other piece of paper and she wrote down, I want to write plays. I want to write plays with Heather instead of fight with her about them. And she hugged her journal. She looked up at those papers and the decision that she had made, and she felt better. And she curled into her sleeping bag again, and even though the sun was beginning to come up, it was pre-dawn, she felt very tired, and she felt ready to fall asleep, knowing that in the morning, when everyone was awake, she and Heather would be best friends again. I should have Ron up here with like an applause. Aw, thank you, Ron. All right, so I need somebody to come up and, okay, Maddie. Oh, and all right, I see Dylan after you. Any one of them. Sounds good, yeah. That's the bottom of the box. Turn it around. A little piece of the paper. And an ornament.
Hymn number 1063. And our teal hymnal supplement.
If you would rise in body or in spirit, join in singing. that's good. Nope. If it's in another box, maybe we'll do it again. Who's going to open the next one? Oh, Dylan. Right. I saw you raise your hand earlier.
Question of the morning. What's in the box? Surprise, it's another scroll.
It's another scroll.
Hymn number 58. Ring out wild bells.
Hymn number 58. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit. I didn't read this before I listed it. This was written in the 1800s, people. Wow. All right, very relevant. All right. Yeah, Hope, come on up. There's only a couple left. Yeah, they're probably all music. I mean, we got an offertory, we've got a prelude.
I recycle, but I don't reuse. Joys and sorrows.
Candle for all of the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken in our hearts. And now is the time for another box to be opened. Andrea. See, I'm just really glad we're doing one service. I'm not sure I could have wrapped twice as many.
Postlude, hymn number 235, Deck the Halls.
What number?
235.
235. Rise in body or in spirit. Deck the halls, 235. Deck the halls with boughs of holly, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la. 'Tis the season to be jolly, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la. Now we have our way of carol, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la. Roll the ancient Yuletide carol, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la. See the blazing June before us, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. Children, to the chorus, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. Following in merry measure, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. While I set the Yuletide treasure, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. Pass away the old year passes, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la. Hail the new year, lads and lasses, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la. Sing we joyous all together, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la. Heedless of the wind and weather, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la. Next. Who hasn't opened one who'd like to? Chris, come on up. It might surprise you that you have to pull the bow. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's probably a scroll with an ornament in it. Pretty sure I did that with all of them. Okay.
Prelude, though I may speak with bravest fire, traditional melody.
All right. Thanks. Yay, come on up.
The benediction. Do you want to do this? You get to do this, no?
I've got the chalice.
Okay, all right. May the light around us guide our footsteps and hold us fast to the best and most righteous that we seek. May the darkness around us nurture our dreams and give us rest so that we may give ourselves to the work of our world. Let us seek to remember the wholeness of our lives, the weaving of light and shadow in this great and astonishing dance in which we move.
I got two left. Vicki, you want to come up and light and open one? This way you'll get an ornament. I mean, maybe.
Offertory. Infant Holy, traditional Polish carol.
Yeah, well, I'll give you the words because the ushers have to rush down too. So, it is good and right for us to offer of our own bounty for the continuance of this congregation. If you are a first or second time visitor with us today, we invite you to let the collection plate pass you by. Your presence here is gift enough. Our morning offering will now be received. I wonder what it is. Sharing. Right? Something that you leave in the dark. Light, something to welcome it in. We won't actually be writing and lighting. That's the fuller version of this. But for this, I'll invite you into a time of sharing verbally. With everything so cold and dark outside, winter solstice is a time to turn inward and dream about what we want to plant when the light returns. It is a time to leave something behind. Let us share some things we want to leave behind in the dark. As you wish, I invite you to speak into the silence that we will hold, something that you intend to leave behind, to say goodbye to. Part 2, after December 21st, the light begins to return. What do we want to welcome into our lives as this light returns? Each of you are now invited to share, as you're comfortable, something that you are welcoming in. That's all of our presents. I have one more thing to do, which is to extinguish the chalice. This was more of a solstice theme, as you perhaps recognized. There's going to be a whole lot of Jesus later on today at the 7 o'clock and the 9 o'clock services in the evening, and you are all invited to return to those. And if you didn't get an ornament and would like to have one, I do have a few remaining. If you would like to do the unison extinguishing, it's number 456 in our hymnals if you don't have it memorized. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.